grew up with jazz, and he grew up with the language of jazz, the knowledge of jazz. His favorite musicians were jazzers, and he hung out with jazzers. So, this kind of, the soul thing, and there's that, and then there's the jazz thing, and then there's the jazz thing, and then there's the songwriter thing, and his synergy of those forces just set him apart from everybody else. And the thing about Steve is, you listen to him play or sing, and you think, man, this is just so joyous, it's so cool. And then if you want to, you get the magnifying glass out, and you think, oh, there's some crazy stuff going on in here, like the chords. Whoa, and all all musicians, or I would say a lot of musicians, really revere him, because he's one of those guys that's taken that deep language and applied it to universal music. And for me, that's a really, really special thing to be observing from afar.
Well, the beauty of those guys who you're talking about is, you listen to the Beach Boys, or you listen to Stevie Wonder, and you're not thinking all of these things about musical theory, and you're not considering, oh, he's gone off the 1-4-5 and now he's doing a
no, not at all.
That way. What you hear is something that you feel attracted to and want to hear again. And sometimes it throws you a little bit off, and you go, I don't totally get that. Do you listen to, I mean, you grew up listening on CDs. One thing I find really interesting is that when you had to have a physical product to listen to something, and you listen to it over and over again, there are certain records that you would listen to and you'd go, I don't really understand what Tom Waits is doing here. But then you'd listen to it 3 more times, you go like, oh my God.
I get it now.
Our attention spans obviously have been shifted. I know that when my kids get on Spotify, if they don't like something in the first 30 seconds, they're like,
they'll never hear it ever again.
How do you listen to music, and does your writing shift depending on what the format is in this world today?
Yeah, well, we're living in interesting times, right? Because, as you say, we've graduated from album psychology into song psychology. And I was thinking about this earlier on today, and I was thinking about how a lot of people lament it. Oh, attention spans are so short. Oh, people don't listen to albums, people don't stay with things, all this kind of stuff. And there is a degree of that. I mean, when I listen to music properly, or thoroughly, I should say, I listen to albums. And there was a time where I would, when I was going to college on the bus, and I would listen to an album in to college and an album out of college every day. And I did hundreds of albums in a couple of years while I was there. And it was fascinating to do that. And I got deep into the stuff. As you say, you go deep, but I actually think that in some ways the way that fans and artists are interacting is changing all the time. And in some ways it's kind of wonderful, because I would say that the way that fans listen to music and interact with artists is no longer about one particular album or one particular song. It's almost about the human connection first, and then the art is the symptom of the artist, rather than it all being about the art and then the artist is a symptom of the art in terms of interaction. And I think this is a good thing, because I actually think that it gives the artist a lot more flexibility and freedom, and less pressure for every one thing to be a specific thing, and more freedom to express in ways. And nowadays you've got tons of people expressing in all sorts of different disciplines, whether it's videos or interviews, or live performances, or live streamed gigs, or podcasts, or whatever. And I actually think the cool thing about that is that you get the sense of who somebody is as an artist, and you're able to endorse that person's filter or that person's experience as the thing that you like as a fan. Which means that, say I write a song that you as a fan just don't like, it doesn't have to be about that song. It can be about the bigger picture of that song. And so in some ways we're being freed from the idea that we have to stay with one thing, and that one thing has to be everything. And I think we're entering more into the trajectory of artists who have long careers, and artists who tell longer stories than one particular thing, and even longer than an album. Even though it seems like it's shrinking, I actually think ultimately the freedom of this is this, because you really get to express over time. But I do, when I make music and I make albums, I make them as records as a whole. But well, I make sure that
your music fits together. It's when I put something on, whether it's on, whether I'm streaming it or whether I'm listening to a physical format, your album is meant to be an album.
Yeah.
It's not a bunch of constructed pieces fit together like a puzzle.
It just happened to be.
I hope people. I hate hearing old people say, "Oh, in the old days we had records and that's how we listen." I hate that. I personally always use records, and I always have the digital thing going too, because I just want to have music available everywhere.
Yeah,
that's ultimately it, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think that's really important. Yeah, I think it's wonderful that people can find music so easily, share music so easily, experience it in all sorts of different ways. Excuse me, but I mean, sitting down with a vinyl and listening to music from a vinyl, like there's nothing like that, and everyone should experience that. Everyone who loves music should experience that, if possible, in some way, because it's crazy, you know, and
Hey,
amazing.
Jacob, a couple. So your sisters, do they play music? Do you ever do anything with them or no?
Yeah, we all play and we all sing. Oh, they're not sort of musicians by trade, but
Yeah.
yeah, we often sing together as a family. Actually, it's one of our favorite things to do. So we'll sit and sing from, you know, hymn books or from Bach chorales or Christmas carols, whatever it happens to be, just because it's nice to do it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And you live with your mom? Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Why
I
do you?
live here in
Why?
my.
I'm sure your mother is a wonderful person. Do you? Are you gonna move out of the house? Does she want you to move out of the house, or does she want you to stay there with all those bongos behind you?
Oh, there's bongo, the bongo at home. I guess the thing about my life at the moment is that I'm actually not home. Well, it's pandemic, so I've been home for a while, but I'm not home that often.
Yeah.
So I'm often, you know, I'm touring for most of the year or traveling for most of the year. Ultimately, I'm sure I'll end up, you know, living in all sorts of other places potentially. But I feel very lucky to have this as a sort of home base, because when you come off a tour, you don't want to have to make your own breakfast. You want to just go, you
Yeah.
know. And so I'm really lucky to have you know, a mum who brings me breakfast in that way, because it means that I can rest and recover and all that kind of stuff. And so it's nice to be here, really.
Yeah.
It's cool.